ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावतीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मत् आचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुदेवो महेश्वरः गुरु साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। ॐ सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणी विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा। कार्पण्यदोषोपहतः स्वभावः पृच्छामि त्वां धर्मसम्मूढचेताः यश्रेयस्या निश्चितं ब्रूहि तन्मे शिष्यस्तेऽहं शाधि मां त्वां प्रपन्नम्। ॐ वाङ्मे मनसि प्रतिष्ठिता मनो मे वाचि प्रतिष्ठितम् आवेरावेर्मयेदि वेदस्य मानिस्तः श्रुतं मे मा प्रहासीः अनेन अधीतेन अहोरात्रान् सन्ततामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारम् अवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारम् अवतु वक्तारम्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पक्षेमाक्षभिर्जत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैः तुष्टुवाग्वं सस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृतश्रवाः स्वस्ति न पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति न तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पति ददातु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ अहं वृक्षस्य रेरिव कीर्तिप्रीष्यं गिरिरिव ऊर्ध्व पवित्रो वाजिनीव स्वमृतमस्मि द्रविणग्वं सवर्सचं सुमेध अमृतोक्षितः इति त्रिशङ्को वेदानुवचनम्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
Narayan Narayan everyone, and wishing everybody a very happy Lodi, happy Pongal, happy Makar Sankranti. It's a beautiful and a very blessed, auspicious weekend.
Thank you and wish you the same.
Thank you. The energies are very, very positive over this weekend. So everything that we do towards our self-elevation, it gets more positively impacted. So a good day to have a satsang. Okay, so let's start with a quick wrap-up summary of the last class. Nana, do you want to do the summary?
I'll try. We started from Shloka 13.05 and just open the page. So So, Lord Krishna talks about the kshetra. He's starting to explain the kshetra and its modifications. So, and he explains us about the what constitutes the field, the kshetra. So he goes on to explain the structure of the kshetra, how the um, um, what constitutes the kshetra. So it starts with the gross principles of about the triad of the not good with explaining all the
Else wants to
fi-
take?
five gross principles. Yeah,
Yeah, does it?
somebody else is better prepared.
You should come, we need to do Swadhyay, okay? Coming to a class without any preparation, without doing any, if just coming for the class is not really going to be helpful for anybody, right? It's a waste of everybody's time, right? I think the only thing that is really, really expected is that there are only serious sadhaks who come for the classes. And seriousness has to reflect in our action, which means it's the bare minimum that is expected is that we are going to do our satsang, we will share our takeaways, and if we've not attended the class last time, then we are going to listen in so that we are able to at least follow through, and we have to do our own manan and nididhyasana, right? We are on chapter 13 now, we're not on chapter 1. So agar after 2.5 years also our consciousness is not elevating, then we really need to stop and ask ourselves, what are we doing with our time? Like, do I really need to come for this class? Might as well go and spend that time with our kids, right? Or do something else.
Sorry, if somebody is better prepared today, I will try from next week. Yeah.
Thank you, Naina. But it's important. I mean, it's not just about this, right? It's all of us are guilty of this. All of us. And we just have to look inside of ourselves and ask ourselves, am I really respecting the tradition? Am I really giving back to the system that I am taking so much from? But if I'm only taking from the system and not giving back commensurate, then I'm just being a taker in the system, right? The first 6 chapters of this book.
So it's not just that. It's an element, the entire element of takeaway and the entire element of summary is for us to crystallize our own thoughts.
Yeah.
That is important, right? It is, and there's a lot that we've heard in these classes that we've heard before. It's not new to us. We've heard it in our childhood, we've heard it in our teenage years, we've heard it in our 20s, we've heard it in our 30s, in bits and pieces. Now we're hearing it on a weekend to weekend basis, on a regular basis, right? And the difference is that now for us to start internalizing slightly, these tools are a great way for us to start putting these principles in our own words. Till we don't start saying it in, like we all know, right? Teacher is the best way to learn. To teach is the best way to learn. So when we start putting it in our own words, we start understanding the gap between our understanding and somebody else, but more importantly, we start internalizing it. At least this is how I understand. At least once you say it in your own words, maybe you can do it in action. If you don't say it in your own words, you don't develop that thought, you can never act. Because every act starts from a thought, right? So when you do the takeaways, when you do the summaries, you're forcing yourself to find the words to express it, so that hopefully it will now come in a little bit of action. And that's the main purpose. It's for your own uddhar more than anything else. So yeah, anyway, so anyone who'd like to do summary for last week? Sure, Kavita. I think you're in mute, Kavita.
Oh, sorry. We did Shloka 5. Here, the Lord speaks about the field and the different modification. So in the picture, it is a transcendental self is the former, and the field starts from trigunas and mind, intellect, ego, sense of action, sense of perception, all come under field. And its modification is the desire, aversion, enjoyment, suffering, aggregate, awareness, and fortitude. So this has been explained in Shloka 6. And in Shloka 7, when we know about, so there are difference between the worldly knowledge and the real knowledge. So worldly knowledge, when we know something, we cannot become that. We just know it. Whereas in the real knowledge, if we know about the real perception, we become that. When we know about the soul consciousness, then we become that itself. So here to become that, we have to follow the means of the perception. That is the way to attain the perception itself. So they both are one and the same. And in the next shloka 7 from 7 onwards, 5 shlokas, the means of perceptions are explained. And here the shloka what we did, it is about humility. Humility is again giving up our ego and giving up our doership, and just the calmness of the mind. And unpretentiousness is the authenticity. So we all tend to kind of like, showing up certain things, we have to leave that. And that is the unpretentiousness. And non-injury need to come with a thought, action, and speech. So we have to follow that non-injury consciously. And then forgiveness. So when we forgive ourselves, we can forgive others also. And that is also a quality of the soul. Rectitude. And rectitude is declutter, basically physically and mentally. And worshipping the preceptor, guru or a teacher, because when we are having the reverence, then only we can open up and we can get the knowledge. And purity. Purity means going more inward, and purity in body, mind, and speech. And steadiness. Steadiness is the equanimity of mind. So whatever is happening, the mind need to be in a very balanced state. And self-control. The self-control we have to practice to remove the distractions, because then only we can keep that calmness in the mind and move towards the journey.
Thank you for the summary, Kavita. Very well done. I think a couple of things that I definitely want us to remember, right? Before we start the next shloka, कि हम लोग ना, अब हम chapter 13 पे आ गए हैं, right? We're on chapter 13. See, हम लोग भगवान को मानते हैं, right? All of us in some small way भगवान को मानते हैं. But क्या हम भगवान की मानते हैं? What भगवान जी wants us to do, क्या हम उनकी मानते हैं? If Bhagwan ji has asked us in Gita to live life in a certain way, क्या हम उनकी बात actually में सुनते हैं या हम अपनी ही करते हैं? मनमानी, हम अपनी मनमानी करते हैं, हम उनकी नहीं सुनते हैं. Then the question is कि यार, actually we are all in this satsang because we somehow understand that intellectually we understand that these principles are correct. Yet we are unable to follow through on them. So the sadhana, the nididhyasan, the manan that needs to happen is to dwell on that question. अगर मुझे intellectually समझ में आ रहा है, then why am I not practicing it? We are all logical people. So then there is something inside of me that is preventing me from following through. All right. And then we create all kinds of reasonings to say why I can't follow through, right? That make me feel okay at a conscious level, right? Why do I self-sabotage myself? That is the topic of self-reflection. And when you go deeper into self-reflection, you will realize that while there is a part of you that believes, right? There is a part inside of you that is a disbeliever. And that believer has to talk to that disbeliever. Don't wrap it away somewhere and throw it in, and don't acknowledge it. If you don't acknowledge the disbeliever inside of you, you will never make progress. Till the time we achieve perception, till the time we achieve the knowledge, that is the only moment of oneness that you will experience, that we all will experience. Before that, we will constantly stay in a state of duality. And that duality is a means of progress. That duality is the only way for us to progress. Last in class also, we had talked about how the duality exists because one will not exist without the other. You cannot enjoy one without the other, right? Shadow exists because of light. You cannot value water without the thirst, right? So dualities exist because of each other, and the dualities, when we use them correctly, help us to progress on that path. So identify that disbeliever in you. Get the believer to talk to the disbeliever. And if you are a disbeliever, then there is a faithful sitting inside of you that is sleeping quietly. Then get the disbeliever to wake up that faithful and talk to him. We all have both of them. We constantly have all dualities inside of us. Need to acknowledge them. Not acknowledging that duality is what stops our progress. Just to say कि हाँ हम तो भगवान को मानते हैं, हम तो भगवान को मानते हैं, and then stopping there will completely stop the progress. अगर मानते हैं तो फिर then why do we not do what is expected? है ना? And again, Naina said sorry, I was not prepared. So first of all, sorry तो बोलना ही नहीं है. हमको तो बिल्कुल ही नहीं बोलना है, right? Sorry has to be said to your own self, to your own Krishna consciousness inside, that I am not acknowledging you. That is the sorry. Sorry to the saints who are in this tradition, to nobody else. You don't owe sorry to anybody else. But it is our duty as facilitators to remind us what is it that we are missing. Because if we are not doing that, then we are not doing our duty. Just as our facilitators will show us the mirror, similarly, it is our duty to constantly tell everyone in this class what our duty is. And we will constantly, this is the path of growth. जाएंगे 2 steps आगे, फिर we will walk somewhere else, then we'll walk somewhere else. But we have to do it with awareness. We have to be aware of where our progress is, where is it stopping, why is it stopping. Everything happens for a reason. There are situations that will happen. There will be moments, there will be periods of very strong sadhana. Then there will be periods जहाँ पे आपकी साधना उतनी strong नहीं होगी, है ना? So then when that period comes, when your sadhana has fallen, it's important to be first of all aware, second acknowledge, then third find out why it is happening. That inquiry is very important. And use the energy that you have stored inside of you with the previous period of strong sadhana to find out what is going on here. And that awareness will show something new to you. It has come for us to learn something. Something is being uncovered. So not acknowledging that then we are wasting that moment. We've not learned something about ourselves that was supposed to have been learned. And these are all things where we need to become aware of our behaviors, why we do certain things that we do. That inquiry, self-inquiry, is the real sadhana. That is the real manan. Not just physical aspects, ki puja kar li, naam jap kar liya. Obviously, those are important. We will continue to do them until the time that our awareness comes to a high level. To a certain extent, this is just cleansing. वो तो आप करते ही रहो, right? वो तो करना बहुत ही, like that's like A level. We have to do that. Now we also have to progress to B and C, where we start to ask ourselves कि यार ये क्यों हुआ? कैसे हुआ? What can I do better? What am I learning about myself? Where is that disbeliever in me that caused me to straddle the path? I experienced anger, I experienced upset, I experienced fear, I experienced jealousy, I experienced annoyance, I experienced whatever, in those moments, why did I experience it? अगर हमने वो self inquiry नहीं की, we have wasted that VVGP that Bhagwan ji gave to us for our own self uddhar. We wasted it. Right? But if we do that self inquiry with compassion, don't get upset with yourself. We have to learn to be compassionate to ourselves, and we have to love ourselves, and we have to forgive ourselves, while at the same time expecting higher standards from ourselves. The problem happens कि हम लोग, when we expect higher standards from ourselves, at the same time we get upset with ourselves. Then there is no compassion left. Right? Then we get upset with ourselves, and we feel that we are not worthy, we are not good enough. All of those feelings come together. So I think one of the biggest journeys would be for us to learn how to be compassionate and yet not be okay with where we are. Continuing that journey, constantly increasing that while being compassionate and forgiving to ourselves is the journey. जब हम वो करने लग जाएंगे, automatically it will reflect in all our relationships. We'll start becoming compassionate, more loving, and more accepting of everybody around us. So even in this incident, where we should not go back and think, yaar, I did not do this, I did not do that. And that's for all of us, right? We did not do this, I'm not good enough, or feel bad about it. There's no moment to feel bad. That's not the purpose. The moment is just to self-reflect. अच्छा क्यों हुआ ये? कहाँ I got involved in the sansaric activity so much कि I could not take out even 10 minutes for this. What is going on in my head? What is going on in my life? And how do I treat it? How do I handle it that this happens? क्योंकि 10 minutes निकलने को तो सबके लिए निकल सकते हैं, right? पर हम नहीं निकालते हैं. Then there is something going on, and we are not looking at it, and that will stop our progress. है ना? And this physical act of summarizing, this physical act of doing swadhyay, this physical act of doing nam jap is whatever we are doing here is what we do in every aspect of our lives. In every aspect of our lives. कहीं ना कहीं likes or dislikes आ जाती हैं. कहीं ना कहीं that disbeliever comes into play. And those are moments of self-reflection that will create breakthroughs for us. When we start to understand who I really am, who I am really being, and why am I being that person? Because we are all very logical people. We are all very emotional people too. So there is something inside of us that drives us to do certain things. Once we know that reason, then we can start to act on it. Only then we can. That knowledge, once it comes, only then we can change. Otherwise, तो हम change ही नहीं कर पाएंगे ना. खाली बोलते रहने से कि नहीं हम ये करेंगे, हम ये करेंगे, हम ये करेंगे, will never change. You can say that for next 15 years and you'll still be the same person. Unless you have done this self-inquiry to find out what is it that is preventing me. Only then the habits will change. And this is a mental, this is like exercise, right? The more we do this, the more we will start doing in every aspect. So this is just a symptom. Use this as an example for self-inquiry. And once you develop that mental muscle to do that self-inquiry, you will exercise it in every aspect of your life. Okay. So now I think in today's class, what we will focus and understand I-ness and minus. I-ness and minus. I-ness is ahamta and minus is mamta. Ahamta, everything to do with me and my sense of ego, who I am being. And mamta, minus, what belongs to me, the attachments that I create in the world around me. So we'll understand these two things better. ahamta and mamta, I-ness and my-ness, through the senses of perception, means of perception. Shlok 8. Sanchita, will you read with us?
The Lord continues.
Indriyartheshu vairagyam
Indriyartheshu vairagyam
anahankara eva cha
ahankara eva cha
anahankara eva cha
anahankara eva cha
janma mrityu jara vyadhihi
janma mrityu jara vyadhihi
dukkha doshanudarshanam.
dukkha doshanudarshanam. Indifference to sense objects, absence of egoism, looking on birth, death, old age, diseases, and sufferings as the blemishes of life. More means of perception. Indifference to sense objects. All enjoyments of the world or the hereafter, which are experienced by the senses, raise an expectation in the mind that their enjoyment would lead to happiness. But little reflection would show to a discerning person that such an expectation proves to be only a mirage, and in fact, ultimately it leads to unhappiness and frustration. Constantly contemplating this results in indifference to them. If the mind, in addition, reaches the conclusion that self-realization is the real aim of human life, renunciation of these seemingly enjoyable experiences becomes easy. Then only those contacts are maintained which are necessary for performance of duties and which lead to this realization. The bliss experienced by this realization makes worldly enjoyments seem meaningless.
So this shloka is about I-ness. Okay. To recognize I-ness and to be able to grow beyond that I-ness. So indifference to sense objects. See, we in the last shloka also we had read 2-3 different things, right? One was in their means of perception, purity, steadiness, and self-control. And the last 3 parts: purity, purity of body, purity of mind, purity of speech. And then there is self-control, which is around control of mind, senses, and of body, right? Now, indifference to sense objects is when we develop that development happens when we have created that self-control, and which leads to purity of your body and mind, right? That is what helps us with the indifference of sense objects. Now, why do we not have that indifference? It's because the senses experience something, and then mind creates a sense of pleasure and pleasure. And so we want to constantly go after the things, the likes and dislikes piece, where we go after the things that create pleasure, because we think that pleasure will give us happiness. Okay, that momentary pleasure is what we want to experience. And we think that, and then after that, we want that pleasure to continue forever, which will never happen because it's transient. It has to necessarily die. So आप इसको इस तरह से सोचो, and this is something that should come to you constantly. Remind yourself so much that the moment you see something that is pleasurable but is not necessarily good for you, and we all understand what is not good for us, right? But we still indulge in it. You should remember one thing. It should come to you like this: if you are indulging in a pleasure, if you are indulging your pleasure senses on your sofa, suffering, which is the duality of that, is waiting for you in your bed. Cannot escape it. They come together. They always come together. You indulge in pleasure, you will get suffering. The moment you retire, you will get suffering. They always come together. So moment you are saying no to a sense of pleasure, in that moment you are saying no to the associated suffering. Not remembering that strong connection is what causes us to think I can avoid the suffering. There is no cost to this, to indulgence in this pleasure. We don't remember the cost of the indulgence. And because we don't, we only see the short-term pleasure, we constantly indulge in it. And this is where our buddhi needs to come into play. This is where the intellect comes into play to remind us, yes, here is this pleasure, that's the associated suffering, and make it very, very real in your head. Make it real by visualizing what it leads to. Know what you're going to suffer once you indulge in something. And see how your intellect will then reduce your craving of that pleasure, and it will shortly go down to zero. The more you develop your control, slowly, then they will stop having any meaning in it. You will say, this is not worth it, yaar. Not worth it. So that's at the intellectual level, right? And eventually, as you, so then now you see, the moment you become that aware on a daily basis, there will be moments where you will exercise that self-control, okay? And you will experience कि अरे पहले आज से पहले I have never said no to this because A, B, C, D. Today I have said no to it. You will experience a certain amount of freedom. And that freedom will give you a sense of bliss that the bondage to that sense object, to that bondage to that pleasure would have never given you. You'll experience something new. Every time you say no to pleasure, you will experience that little bit of extra freedom, that ability to breathe in a way that you would have never experienced before. That breath of freedom is very different. And you can only experience it when you actually achieve that freedom by saying no to pleasure. And there will be moments where you will indulge in that pleasure, because in that moment, your intellect is not strong enough to control your mind, and your mind and your senses will take over, right? In that moment, even when you're doing it, do it with awareness, and then experience the negatives, that the negative fallout that happens. In certain cases, it will happen immediately. In certain cases, it will happen after a couple of days, but be aware. Do it with awareness. Do it with the awareness of how that sense of pleasure makes you feel later on, mentally, emotionally, right? When you do it with that experience, and constantly having both types of experiences, you will start, that mental muscle will start to grow. And your ability to say no to those pleasures will increase. Do both things with awareness, and both will increase our path. खाली एक चीज experience बार बार no करने से आपको नहीं वो awareness build होगी. It's when you indulge and you do that also with awareness, and then see, हाँ actually में ऐसा होता है. वो कभी कभी हाथ में आग जलाना, आग में हाथ जलेगा तभी समझ में आता है कि हाँ actually में जलता है. And this is what it feels like, and this is what the other thing feels like. They both will increase your pace of knowledge acquisition. So indifference to sense objects is very important, because when we indulge in sense objects, so they immediately lead to suffering. The suffering in the bed, dukh ka bhog, where we identify with the pain. Okay? If you don't indulge without awareness, dukh ka bhog hoga. You will identify with that pain. Okay? But if you do it with full awareness, okay, I am indulging, I am not able to control, I am doing this. You do it with full awareness, तो दुख का भोग नहीं होगा. जब अगली बार आपको दुख आएगा ना, associate हो तो आएगा ही आएगा, because it is law of nature. You've taken a path, तो उसका end result यही ही है. But you're doing it with awareness. तो जब वो end result आएगा ना, you will experience it without identifying with that pain. दुख का भोग नहीं होगा. You will experience the pain without suffering along with it. You will watch it and you will say, yes, this happens. A leads to B. And this is what that B feels like. Then you will start to associate A and B together. The moment you will see A, you will never now see A by itself. You will see A and B together. You'll always see A and B together after that experience, once you've experienced it with awareness. तो ये है दुख का प्रभाव. Dukh ka prabhav is when now you have risen above dukh and you have the ability to ask, why has this situation come to me? What did I do to create this situation? And how am I going to use it now to connect with him? That is why awareness is that important. Whether you are indulging in your sense objects or whether you're able to say no to them. But do both with awareness. Make sense? And now what kind of sense objects, right? So whatever we are consuming, whether it is food, whether it is music, whether it is movies, whether it is social media, whatever it is that we are consuming with all our five senses, right? Including our sense of touch, whatever we are consuming, what we wear, how we wear them, everything is consumption, right? Always ask yourself, whose desires or whose needs are being fed through this consumption, and do it with awareness. Kshetra ya kshetragya. And when we do it, and there are moments when we will say, Ki, yaar, theek hai, kshetra, we are now fulfilling the desires and not even needs. There are needs of kshetra, then there are desires of kshetra. Do everything with that level of awareness so that you don't identify with the pain that comes later. And you can rise above it and use every action of yours and every situation that comes as a means of connecting back to him. Dukh mein bhi you will connect back to him. You will take an action which is against the scriptures or against what is being told to you to do. That also you do with awareness, you will help to connect back to him. Because now you can see that A and B. A leads to B. And you solidify that knowledge and use that also to connect with him. As long as we are living life with awareness, it will always lead to improvement in our acquisition of knowledge. It will always be a step forward to him, irrespective of what we do. It will always lead to our uddhar. We move up. We'll read.
Absence of egoism. Due to delusion and ignorance, there is a feeling of ownership of the body, mind, intellect, and the senses. This is a common form of ego. A little deep thinking would reveal that there is no control over their getting weaker and weaker due to old age or sickness. They are entities to be used only so long as they are usable for self realization. As this thought becomes firm, the sense of egoism vanishes. This conviction ultimately leads to absence of egoism.
So the first one and the second one, it has the same quality for us to be aware of. And that is equanimity, indifference. And I think we've discussed this in the past as well. Unless you are equanimous, you cannot make the right decisions. Biases come in when you have ego or when you have attachment to results because of sense objects, because of feelings, right? It is only when you are indifferent, it is only when you are equanimous can you start deciphering information to make the right judgment, call, and decision. And in our case, that judgment, call, and decision is always related to our own uddhar, our self-realization. Our equanimity is what we need for us to experience an unfavorable situation, hands folded, and say, this is here to teach me something. Thank you. I don't know what, I'll find out. But, there is this quote that I read recently from Shah Rukh Khan. Okay? Shah Rukh Khan says, life is just like a movie, right? No movie ever has a sad ending. It always ends happy. And life is the same. So if you're unhappy, if it's an unfavorable situation, iska matlab hai picture abhi baki hai. The movie is yet to finish. We tend not to remember that. We tend to react to a lot of things. And the more equanimous you are, the more you are aware that you are not reacting to your ego. Your ego always wants right, wrong, and ego always wants validation. It always wants to feel superior. It always wants to feel, I'm so good.
See, now we have to, we are in last shatak. Okay. If we are not doing everything on a practical basis, however esoteric this last shatak is, right? Gyan Yog, right? So it feels like everything is related to my head. But boss, if we are not practicalizing everything here, then there's something wrong. Okay. So while we can keep on hammering about we need to do equanimity, we need to have equanimity, ठीक है, बहुत हमको समझ में आता है. All of us understand today. Anybody I pick out of you and ask you, is equanimity important? Is equanimity necessary? Yeah, of course it is. Right? We all understand that at this stage. Right? Why it is important, how it is important, how it will help me in my spiritual journey. All of us know that. But होती है क्या equanimity on a daily basis? Let your child scream back at you and tell you, I'm not going to do what you're telling me to do. I will do exactly the opposite. And let's see how equanimous we are in that moment. Let experience a moment when you are in a stressful project situation where you're going to meet a deadline and the guy comes back and says, I'm not doing this because, whatever. And the thing is in your lap. Do we feel any equanimity in that moment? नहीं करते ना. There is no equanimity. क्यों नहीं? That is what you need to ask yourself. क्यों?
So there are
इसलिए नहीं होती.
There are two stages to it. The first stage that you have to be aware of if you want to be act from equanimity is zip your mouth. You will have a whole world of emotions inside of you, but that does not need to come out. No action is the best action when you're feeling a lot of emotions, because now you're going to react based on those emotions, not from any gyan. And the second stage is these emotions that are coming inside of you, when they become calmer, when it's riled up, there is nothing, there is no gyan, there is no intellect. You will justify everything in the face of it, but it's not real. 2 days later, 3 days later, when you look back at that situation, you will find what the right response is. Pick up the book. If you're very, very agitated, pick up the book, open any page, read it. Then you will find the response. But we tend to want to react rather than respond. In every situation, we want to react because we are in a hurry for everything. But life is not a hurry, and our uddhar is in our control.
So
one of the
like with
biggest-
everything, it is all multi-pronged approach that you need to take. Okay. One is, ठीक है, I'm getting upset, I'm getting riled up, what I need to do and how I need to be in that situation. But in the Gyan Shatak now, you need to go a level deeper. हो ही क्यों रहा है ये? हो ही क्यों रहा है? What is the root cause? कब तक आप symptoms को आप control करते रहोगे? You have to strike at the root cause. In Gyan Shatak, you have to go to that root cause now. The root cause is because we have an ego that identifies with the limitedness of the body. We identify with the body, we identify with the intellect, the mind, and the sense objects, and we think this is me. We think this is me and I control it. This is me, this is mine, this body is mine. That is why all of these things happen. ठीक है? समझ में आ गया? Now what? How do I get rid of it? The only way to get rid of this is ignorance. This is nothing but ignorance. Hai na? Two types of things happen. Okay, ignorance is when you don't have the right knowledge. Okay, you have a lack of knowledge. That part actually is easier to solve. You can just acquire the knowledge and the lack of knowledge will go away. The second part is, which is the second part is where you have acquired wrong knowledge. So आपका घड़ा पहले ही भरा हुआ है with wrong knowledge. That is very difficult to resolve for. Very difficult. Because now you have to unlearn a lot of things and then relearn the new things. बहुत difficult है. Which is why children, when they start on the Gita journey, it's much easier to fill them up with right knowledge than people like us who start when we are much older. Because for us, it is not about learning, it is about unlearning first and then relearning.
Or it's like all of us are adults.
Hmm.
Try picking up a new sport to learn. Try swimming if you don't know swimming. Try skiing if you don't know skiing. And you realize it's so hard because our body and muscle, we have to unlearn a lot of our basic things to be able to enjoy that new environment or learn that new environment. It's the same thing with Gita.
Correct. So now, for coming back to ego, right? We understand now. Ego is when the ignorance, the agyan, the lack of knowledge that I am this body, I am these senses, I am this intellect is me, this mind is me, the emotions I feel is me, right? How do you, and I have complete control over this. How will you get rid of this ignorance? How will you acquire the knowledge? Through self-inquiry. You have to really, really observe yourself and see, do you actually have the control that you are disillusioned enough to think that you have? Even on your own body that you think is you. Can you stop it from aging? For all the things that you do in this world, you still will continue to age. And there will be associated debilitation that will come from it. Can you stop yourself from dying? Can you become immortal? Can you stop your heartbeat or restart it? Can you have any control over your digestive processes? Can you control your internal processes that are going on? Can you control even the thoughts that are coming to you? Observe yourself deeply and with awareness. When you really, really indulge in that deep self-inquiry, it will slowly actually start to dawn on you, and that knowledge will turn into an experience and not just remain at the intellectual level. And once we understand how little control I have actually no control at all, then I really start to understand the meaning of that this body is not me. I am only an experiencer. And I am somebody different from this. And then that sense of I-ness that comes from this body will start to dissipate away. Then that egoism will start to dissipate away. And in that moment, then once you have that, then your sense of reverence towards this temple, this body that has been given to us to do the duty will start to increase. And then you watch how you will stop or you will become much more aware of what you're indulging in with this body. Even when you're exercising and doing the right things, the good things, that also bhav will change. Now you're not going to indulge in an exercise because it is because you want to look good or fit into the next dress, or because any of those because people will have good compliments to give you. You will do exercise because it is the right thing to do, and the kind of exercises you will do then will also change because your bhav has changed, your purpose has changed, the exercises you will do will change, the end goal will change, right? And similarly, what you eat, what you listen, what the bhog that happens with your senses will turn into yoga as well.
So let me add here a little bit, right? as long as, so human body is given to us for a reason. There's a very clear purpose, and that purpose has been highlighted over and over again. We don't identify with that purpose because of our own antakaran, right? Our own inability to believe it and fully surrender to that purpose. That's on us. But I'll also say this, the moment you fully believe it and surrender, that doesn't mean your journey is over. That's the beginning. Because as long as you have human body, you will have suffering. Correct? The only difference is you will not identify with that suffering. So yesterday or last couple of days, we watched a movie on Moses, right? And I'm sure everyone's familiar with the story of Moses. And what was incredible about that story and about that man is he's obviously known as the first prophet, right? And the father, like the prophet for Judaism. And he was born in the riches. I mean, he wasn't born in the riches, but he grew up with the riches in the kingdom. And he gave all of that up because he wanted to save the slaves, his people, the Hebrew people, the Jewish people. The amount of suffering he went through and the time period that he suffered, 20 years, right? Before he was able to achieve his goal. It just goes to show you could be a realized saint. You could be talking to God like he was talking to God. But that doesn't mean he's not going to suffer. That doesn't mean he's not going to have doubt. He was with thousands of his slaves on the beach in front of the sea and the ocean. And he gave up. He's like, I'm done. I've misled my people. I'm not who I thought I was. I don't believe I am the prophet. I don't believe God has helped me. I'm done. And he went and he threw his sword in the ocean and all of that. And then eventually miracles started happening around him, right? So it's not as if he'd lost faith or he didn't have doubt, but he always was focused on his path, which was for him seva. So when he went back to his family, he told his wife that, I hope you've not given up your faith. You will need it more than ever. She said, why? And then she looked out and she saw thousands of people there. She's like, that's my family now. And we have to take care of them. Right? So somewhere you have to realize, as a human body, we will constantly go in this duality. Constantly.
Yeah.
But our intellect is our ability to constantly look for the miracles, because the miracles are there everywhere. That is why we all have the book in our hands, sitting in our comfort of our houses and living the lives that we are living. Right? But we'll only see the miracles if we let go of ego. If you think you are doing it, then good luck to you.
But that's the important thing, right? कितना भी ये बोलते रहें कि ego is this, I'm not this body, and it will never translate into any sort of knowledge unless you start doing some serious manan. Only that manan will lead to nidhi dhyasan. That is why that sadhana is so extremely important. And that is why it is being constantly talked about swadhyay, 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 every class. Varna kuch nahi hoga. You can read this book, you can come into a satsang for the rest of your life. You will still be the same person when you die and you'll come back into the next life. Koi difference nahi hoga. Unless you make that self-inquiry, become aware. That is the whole purpose of this shatak. Start doing a very serious self-inquiry. And observe, just observe. Observe how you are being, what is happening around you. And that self-inquiry is the only thing and the only thing that will lead you to the truth. Nobody else, no Gita, no book, nothing can lead you to the truth except you. Nothing should stand between you and God and that truth.
So just to add what Tweena is saying, do your self-inquiry seriously, but don't take it too seriously. All right? Intensity needs to be in the effort, but all the flaws, all the highs, all the lows, don't take it too seriously. Everything is a phase for you to experience and pass through.
Mm.
It's just to become more and more aware. Once you become, and we've talked, I mean, I think Kavita also mentioned it. This is the type of knowledge, once you acquire, you become it. You're not separate from the knowledge. So self-awareness and self-inquiry is just a way for you to become aware. Once you become aware, you become it.
Yeah.
So don't take what you're uncovering in self-awareness, don't analyze, don't get into like taking things too seriously. Oh my God, I am this, I am that. No, you're nothing. Just become aware and then you'll become.
Straight ahead.
Blemishes of life. Birth, death, old age, diseases, and sufferings are the blemishes of human life. A continuous reflection would show that human life is necessarily subject to these miseries. It is possible that a doubt may arise about the existence of God, but these experiences occur in the life of everyone, and their existence is never in doubt. Everyone knows that it is uncertain when death may strike its fatal blow and when disease may inflict its crippling stroke. When old age comes, the legs totter, the hands tremble, and the skin gets wrinkled. One also cannot be blind to the pangs of birth and the troubles of infancy. Continuously pondering over these miseries of life leads to a strong craving to attain the state of eternal peace.
I think we touched upon this with the entire Moses story, right?
Mm.
Suffering is there. There's no point hiding. There's no point running. There's just experience without identifying.
And in this shloka is the only shloka in entire Gita where birth, death, old age, diseases, the sufferings, these are part of life, right? Undeniable part of everybody's life. The word used in this shloka is dosh. इनको दोष कहा गया है. ये दोष है. Blemishes. Dosh. The reason they are being called dosh, and is the only place in entire Gita where they are being called a dosh. Otherwise क्या बोलते हैं? ये सब चीजें आएंगी, take it with prasad buddhi, which is what Abhinav was saying, right? Treat them as phases of life, as something that will help us learn from them and help us, if we use them correctly, all of them will help us progress on our path, on our journey. So take each of them with prasad buddhi and use them to create a connection to him. But in this particular shloka, and the only shloka where they are being called dosh, blemishes, and this has been done to remind ourselves and to remind ourselves that we should be disincentivized to come into this life again and again. चलता है, ठीक है, हम लोग ये करते रहेंगे. क्या जरूरत है मुझे इतना मेहनत करने की, right? I'll come back in this life again and again and again and again and again, and I'll just keep living this over and over again. So this is a way to say that you have to disincentivize yourself from coming back into this life again and again in this fashion where we are stuck in it. Even after you reach enlightenment, you will still come back to help with a seva bhav, right? But don't come back in a way where you're trapped. You're trapped by your senses and you have no control. You have no freedom. You're just trapped. Yes, Bhagyashree.
So why should we not take the self-inquiry seriously?
I didn't say that.
No, what I said is take the self-inquiry seriously, but what you uncover, don't become serious about it, because then it's very easy to get into blame game. I'm not.
I think you mixed up. I think it was really confusing.
Okay, so you're saying that was very confusing explanation. But yeah, take the self-inquiry seriously.
Just keep it simple for now.
Take the self-inquiry seriously.
I think what he's talking about is, okay,
when you
let me explain. Okay, what he was saying is that what happens when you take your self-inquiry, I think he was more referring to me rather than anything else. When you start doing your self-inquiry really seriously, you will discover a lot of stuff. Okay. And for me, the effect over last few years has been that I've become extremely serious right? And somewhere along that line, he felt that I'm losing out on any kind of joy, right? Because I'm taking everything very seriously. कुछ भी हो गया उसके बाद अरे ऐसे कैसे कर दिया, अरे ये मैंने कैसे कर दिया, अरे देखो, then I'll get into that self inquiry mode and then ये हो गया. I was becoming very serious. I think that's what he was trying to bring out. But वो आगे की बात है, वो हम देखेंगे जब हम वहां पहुंचेंगे. Then you will realize that also somebody like him will come and tell you you're becoming too serious in life, and then you will analyze that also, and then you will see अच्छा क्या, what is going wrong in my self inquiry. Then you will correct that self inquiry also, and then you learn where or what is, like, where you lost the essence in that path. But it's all part of journey. आगे पीछे आगे पीछे आगे पीछे. Maybe you will never even experience that, right? Because of who you are as a person. Maybe that's a problem that you will never experience, because that's a problem you've resolved for in your previously already. Okay? Like my self-inquiry and his self-inquiry have very different outcomes. Right? You're basically speaking to me more
Yeah,
than
I'm just
anybody
saying,
else.
I've,
Get too serious.
I've also gone through that phase that when we start doing serious self-inquiry, we start triggering emotions like shame and guilt. I'm not good enough. Some other people are better. Look, they're able to recite so many shlokas. I cannot. Oh, I'm not working hard enough. Oh, I'm not doing so. You will start, all these emotions will start coming up, right? But it's very important not to identify with any of those.
Which
Because
is
all
why
of
that
that is also
compassion and
sansaric.
forgiveness, exactly, which is why that compassion and forgiveness come into play. Because when you start to actually see, हम लोग क्या करते हैं, we don't want to do self inquiry. क्यों नहीं करना चाहते हम? क्योंकि जैसे ही self inquiry करते हैं, हमारी नजर पड़ती है on all our doshas, okay, and that creates a very uncomfortable space. Then we start being very uneasy with our own selves, and in that moment we are not being satsang for ourselves. हम लोग immediately we become kusang. So what do we want to do? We want to leave ourselves. We don't want to be with ourselves. Because self-inquiry means that we have to spend a lot of time with ourselves. We don't do it because immediately all these feelings of shame, guilt come up, and we become immediate kusang for ourselves. So we leave that self-inquiry. We don't want to look into it. We don't know how to deal with it.
Also, because we are 40 years old now, so we've built our defense mechanisms and we have a story that we're awesome. Who's the best human being on the planet? I am.
I never do anything wrong. Everybody around me does
I make
anything wrong.
mistakes, but I don't do anything wrong.
Yeah. I make mistakes, but
Every
others make more
single-
than me.
Every single human being in the world, adult, thinks they are the best. And all they do is right. Now, examine that thought.
Yeah, and then how to deal with that? How to deal with self-inquiry in a positive, healthy manner is to constantly practice forgiveness, compassion, and love for your own self. Recognize what is going on, but recognize it with detachment. Look at it from an external point of view. Do not put labels to it. This is right, this is wrong. What I did here was right, what I did here was wrong. Immediately आप label करोगे अपने आप को. वो labeling छोड़ देना है. There is nothing right or wrong. This is also a path to connect. Here I found a path to connect, nothing else. There is nothing right or wrong about my behavior or my being. Everything is good. This has become a path for me to connect to the Lord. So forgive yourself for the mistakes you make. Forgive yourself. Have compassion and love for yourself. That is extremely important in this path of self-inquiry. वरना आप करोगे ही नहीं self-inquiry. You will stop the moment you become uncomfortable with yourself, which will be at the very first step. And that will stop all your progress. Without that love, compassion, and forgiveness for yourself, there is no journey ahead. Sorry, Rituj. You got tired and put your hand down.
No, you had answered my question. That's why I put it down. But just one thing, but we've discussed before about reflection and judgment as well, about how we're judgmental about ourselves and what you were discussing about that. And reflect, because we're so hard on ourselves that we tend to just be our harshest critic. So maybe that also was something I thought of when you were discussing that.
Exactly. So it's the same thing. Judgment कर देते हैं ना हम लोग, right or wrong लगा देते हैं. Immediately we label ourselves. Right? So that is the judgment. And that will stop our self-inquiry very, very quickly. It will stop our growth very quickly because we are no longer really seeing things for what they are. We are seeing it through a lens of a judgment. तो अगर हम लोग ने बोल दिया कि ये तो गलत है, then we cannot understand ये क्यों हो रहा है. हो तो रहा है ना, तो किसी सही रीजन, किसी गुड रीजन की वजह से हो रहा है.
So
And we will not be able to understand because हम understand कर ही नहीं सकते ना उस चीज को जिसको हमने गलत बोल दिया है. Because now we want to detach ourselves from whatever we've called is wrong, but now we want to stay away from it. तो हम उसको understand कभी नहीं कर पाएंगे. If we don't love something or somebody, we will never be able to understand it. For you to develop understanding, you need to love it. So even your biggest blemishes, even your biggest faults, even the things that you want to change, you have to love that part of yourself. Otherwise, you will never understand it. Never understand it. And because you will never understand it, because you've never loved it, you will never change it. You will continue that behavior till your grave. It will never go away. Because you've never made it yours. You've always put it away in a little box that you are unable to accept. And you've kept it away from you. That is not you. That is a part of you that comes out, which is like a mistake. You've never fully accepted yourself. Your image of yourself is everything minus, 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 minus. Make
So-
sense?
let me paint a different picture. We've all read Vibhuti Yoga, right? Vibhutis, that Bhagwanji gives us Vibhuti. So if you are compassionate in a situation, it's because of his grace. He's given us those qualities, right? Some people are more compassionate, some are less. That is his grace. And we read about all those qualities earlier. Those are all divine qualities, correct? Visualize that as a pipe of water. Except that water is full of vibhutis and divine qualities. And each of us have that pipe coming into our being. Except that we've blocked that pipe with our own labels and judgments. So now that vibhuti that is supposed to come to us, that is flowing to us, is coming in trickle because we are attached to certain versions of ourselves. I'm always helpful. I'm always friendly. I will only, whatever, I'm very hardworking. These are all labels that actually restrict us from receiving his divine energy and
Yeah,
the vibhutis.
positive and negative labels, both.
Right? Positive labels
Both
and
are limiting.
any attachment, any labels. Right? Our entire job is to remove these labels and let that vibhuti, let his vibhuti flow through us. That is our entire, that is when we become one with divine consciousness. Because then I will use whatever vibhuti I need in every situation. Bhagwan ji will keep flowing it.
Hard work की विभूति है, कभी चाहिए, and it is actually a positive thing in that situation, तो use होगी. Because your situation में, if I'm attached to it, it might actually be the negative thing. नहीं जरूरत है उसमें इतना हार्ड वर्क करने की, छोड़ दो. 80-20 प्रिंसिपल लगा के मूव ऑन करो. दैट इज वेयर द ग्रेटेस्ट वैल्यू विल कम फ्रॉम. बट नहीं, हम तो हार्ड वर्किंग है ना, तो हर चीज में उतना ही मेहनत डालना है. एंड दैट विल एक्चुअली रिस्ट्रिक्ट द वैल्यू ऑफ व्हाट नीड्स टू बी क्रिएटेड. Because with that extraordinary hard work, I've lost a lot of time. There's too much of resources that got consumed that reduce the overall value in that situation. You see? कोई भी label आप attach करोगे, it will eventually overall reduce the value.
That is what I was trying to say earlier in my explanation also. When you do your self-inquiry, these judgments and these things come up. Don't get so attached and into analyzing any of it. Eventually, you have to let go of it all.
Correct.
You only have to become aware. Why am I attached to this label of being carefree, for example?
Actually, the moment you have attached a label, know that you've created an attachment there. वहाँ attachment create. The moment you put a label, right, wrong, there's कुछ भी, anything, any label, that means कुछ एक छोटा सा connection आ गया वहाँ पे, एक hook आ गया है. Become aware of that. Make sense?
Should we used to takeaways? Then?
You takeaways.
Did you explain Gyan ke sadhan last time?
ये ज्ञान के साधन ही तो चल रहा है
Yeah.
7 to 11.
I'm not sure if I got your explanation.
Huh.
Okay. All right, we'll just do takeaways, guys. So anybody who'd like to, or if anyone has questions.
I can start for the takeaways. Is that okay?
Yeah,
Just start.
absolutely.
So I think there are lots of learnings with all those 3 points. But for me, the biggest takeaway for myself is just I need to have forgiveness, compassion, and love for myself. I think that is very important for me, that I tend to about the self-inquiry and self-awareness. And this week, with every situation that I face in life, I want to, and in this week and even ahead after the class, of course, that I have to inquire and just examine myself through those situations and just be aware and be mindful of it and then move on, not just keep hitting myself about it and being, why did I do this? So I think that is something I'm going to take from them.
So I was going to say it earlier also, but since you mentioned it, I will say it again. I'll now say it. There is nothing about you sorry, I'll say it in my context. There is nothing about me or my life that honestly I need to take too seriously. Nothing. Everything is temporary. So don't take yourself, like that's the biggest thing. Don't take anything too seriously, except for one thing, yoga. How do I connect this back to Bhagwanji? How do I connect this back to Bhagwanji? That doesn't mean you don't put serious effort. That is the opposite of what Gita is. You put in serious effort, but don't take things seriously. That's the difference.
For me, it would be if I ask myself, why, how can I do this? Or why did I do this? The simple answer is because it had to uncover something for myself. That's why I did it. Now, what can I uncover and what can I learn? And how can I move forward with it? Simple. Uske beyond, you don't have to apply any judgments to yourself. मतलब ये याद रखो कि यार पता है उस क्वेश्चन में भी यू सी हाउ मच ईगो इज देयर. मैंने क्यों किया? बहुत ईगो है उस क्वेश्चन में. There is nothing in this world, एक पत्ता नहीं हिलता without him wanting it. Nothing happens without his design, and he is a master craftsman. When you think you did it, there is nothing but ego in that question. You didn't do anything. God made you do it to help you uncover something. Now, can you leave your ego behind, see the greater design, say thank you to Bhagwan Ji ki kya hua and what is it that you need to learn, and then use it to connect with him. Immediately आपका वो connection हो गया भगवान से उस time पे.
But it's
Can
like
I have a question
it-
here? If you're saying that everything God does, then why will He give us the intellect? Isn't it He gives you what I'm saying, isn't it that He will give you a situation and He will expect you to go, and in a situation there's always, I've seen there are two paths, and it is He will help you, and with your swadhyay, with whatever you're learning through your journey, you kind of He enables you to take the right move and or the right step to move a step towards Him. But isn't it He still leaves that choice to you? It is your choice. You have to apply your choice, your intellect to choose the right thing. He will only present you with a situation. Because if God is doing everything, then what is the meaning of this life? Then where am I evolving as a human being? Maybe a very
You are made in the image of God, which means you have choice. And that is your work in every situation. Your job is to select the right purpose and the right bhav. उसके बाद जो होना है वो होगा, और जो आपको एक्शंस करने हैं, जो इमोशंस हैं, जो भी कुछ है, वो सब आएंगे. भाव आपका करेक्ट होना चाहिए. दैट इज योर चॉइस. डेस्टिनी इज लाइक when you are, what is your destiny? Your destiny is to play a particular instrument. ठीक है, वो डेस्टिनी अगर आपकी है कि आपको ये इंस्ट्रूमेंट प्ले करना है इन द लार्जर म्यूजिक ऑफ लाइफ, you may not be able to change the instrument, but the quality of music you create with that instrument that's been given to you is your effort, your prarabdha, your purusharth.
So let me
So there's no fatalism to this whole thing.
let me give you an example. Video game is being created by a bunch of video game creators. They know the whole world. They know the inside out. But what, so they know the entire game. But what do? They give the player a choice. How you want to interact with the video game. For the player, what do they want to do? They want to go from level 1 to level 10 to conquer the video game, understand the whole world and get out of it. Then they don't play the game anymore. So we are like that. We are made in God's image. We are little gods, right? We all are Jivatmas. We are in his video game, which is this Momaya. It's his sansar. He is the video game creator. Right now, we are getting attached to the elements of the video game instead of the game maker. And our entire game of levels is basically to go to the game maker and get out of the video game. Let the others continue in the video game, keep dying, coming back, keep dying, coming back, stuck on level 2, stuck on level 3. Let them do it. Yeah, that's their free will. But because I'm made in the image of God, I have the choice to choose the game maker. Can I get out?
I mean, ultimately, all of us, whatever we are doing, we are playing to get out of the game anyway, whether we understand it or not.
Everyone's going in that direction because we are in different levels. There is no other way.
And we will all get there, by the way. Every one of us will get there. Every one of us is going to end up being perfect at the end of the journey. Yeah, Bhageshri.
Also, I think I'll just add to Kakuli's point. Also, I think I read somewhere that every action is being decided. Like, even like switching on the light bulb is kind of predetermined before we actually take the action. So from this whole discussions that we are doing around Gita, I think it comes to the conclusion that everything is decided. Every action will be decided and decided for us. The only difference that we can make in via our free will is the bhav that we experience around those actions. Having said that, again, very difficult to practice it on a day-to-day basis and moment to moment, but it just gives you a sense of relief that I don't have a lot of control over a lot of things. My only control is the emotion that I experience at that point. So, just
playground.
Very, very well said.
Yeah.
Very well.
Yeah.
Your Dharma Kshetra, Kurukshetra is only inside. That's your only playground, like Smita said. Dharma Kshetra, Kurukshetra is your Antakaran. Or kuch nahi hai. That's your battlefield. है ना? Man is capable of putting himself through untold misery and is also capable of experiencing a lot of bliss. We have both things. We have full scope of heaven and full scope of hell inside of us. And we experience it ourselves on a daily basis by either tormenting ourselves or by keeping ourselves happy. There's nobody else responsible for it. Bahar jo ho raha hai, VVGP is not responsible for it. Irrespective of how much we try and put a blame on an external situation, person, VVGP, kuch bhi le lo. Ultimately, that is just us giving our power away and not wanting to do anything about it. We alone are capable of tormenting ourselves, and we alone are capable of giving ourselves joy and happiness and bliss that we all deserve. We and we alone. And all of that is at playground of Antakaran. Jitna shuddh hoga, jitna clean hoga, utna zyada you can clearly see these aspects. Bhageshri, you had something to add?
I was saying when you said like God made me do it, is it like God made me do it or I chose to do it? Is it not my free will to do what I want, or is that the case? Or you're saying that the action is going to happen, but my free will is just the bow.
Correct.
So God made me do it. I mean, I didn't do it. It was meant to happen anyway. I didn't do it. Is that what you're saying? I didn't do it.
Correct.
You didn't do it because the resources, the energy, your body, everything that was required to do that action was given to you by somebody else.
So I'll give you an example, and this is something for you to probably experience as homework. Can you move a finger without thinking about it first? Try it. You just nodded your head, Bhagyashri. Can you do that nod without thinking about it? Your eyes just went to the right. Can you do that without thinking about it? No. Where do thoughts come from? We don't know. And like Tuina said, we are made in God's image. We are God's fingers. It is very hard for us to do anything without his thought.
But let's say if I'm doing something like, let's say I'm hitting someone, is that also God made me do it? Like hitting someone?
I don't know. That's for you to inquire in a particular situation. I cannot.
If you have, okay, now I'm going to say this, I don't know if you will be able to get it, but you hit somebody in a certain situation, okay? It happened for a reason. That thappad happened for a reason. For everybody in that environment who was impacted by it. You, the other person, and everybody has a secondary and the third tertiary effects around it. There was a reason that situation happened. There was a reason that thing happened because of certain other prarabdh that that person had and you had. Okay, now how you use that situation and how every single person in that environment uses that situation to ask what happened, why it happened. I didn't do it, that person didn't do it. There is no blame game going on, but you go internally and find why it happened. What is it trying to show you? You hit somebody, there is something for you to uncover. What triggered that thappad? Can you uncover that? What is the dosh inside of you that you need to cleanse?
No. So
and the other person will have similar thing, what he experienced. Like that is the level at which everybody, that had to happen.
that had to happen.
That had to happen. Let's
Now,
be very
the
clear.
only thing is this: the person, the instrument who engaged in that thappad, that person needs to think, I've just added more prarabdha.
No, not
Massive
just-
amount
it
of
depends on the thought process.
and what
you need
bhav
to
I
do.
had
Yeah,
and how much prarabdha I added, whether it was the
depends on my
righteous thing,
bhav.
correct? All of
Before
that
and
needs to
after.
go for you to uncover whether it was righteous action or not a righteous action. If it's not a righteous action, how much more bondage have you created?
I mean, either way, Bhagyashri, the first is that action
yeah,
had to happen. And now it is about the free will is what can I do to use that VVGP that has happened to connect to him. That is my free will. वो होना था because of certain other things that have happened much before. उसकी वजह से ये एक्शन होना ही था. लेकिन अब इसका जो हमारे अंतःकरण पे इम्पैक्ट पड़ रहा है, that is my free will. And जो उसका अंतःकरण पे इम्पैक्ट पड़ रहा है is what will create bondage or create freedom, not that action of thappad at all.
But this is where self-inquiry comes in. I think we're going way too into detail. So this is where self-inquiry comes in for you in your situations. Hypothetically, it's very hard to decipher and analyze, and that is not why we are here.
नहीं, but ठीक है, see, ultimately भाग्यश्री ये होएगा, ये आप experience करोगे. वो this is where that concept of what is doership. This is a very good question, Avina, because it is where your concept of doership starts to evolve. See, today all the questions at today's shloka was around INS, right? And all the questions are around that concept of doership. Very good questions. Now we need to practice it. What am I doing? Where am I getting a sense of doership? Or refine hoga wo. We will refine our concept of doership from gross to subtler to subtler to subtler to subtler. जो हम लोग पहले सोचते थे तो doership है ही नहीं, वहां पे भी हम discover करेंगे कि अरे यहाँ पे भी मैंने doership डाल रखी है. Right?
Let's continue. Next.
I can go. So this one thing which you said that, you know, if we are fulfilling our any of our desires, we should ask whether we were fulfilling the need of the Kshetra or the Kshetrajna. So that was kind of a good thing. And then when we were talking about ego in the second part, like how we said that equanimity, if we are equanimous, we will not react to our ego. Otherwise, I mean, ego will always come in, but if we are equanimous, we will understand that, you know, this is happening and something like that. Yeah, these two things.
Thank you.
Shall I go next?
I think. Go ahead.
Smita, you want to say? Okay. So I have a lot of takeaways, but the main one is that the pain and pleasure are dual in nature. So, you know, the self-inquiry happened during that time. I ended up eating a lot of sweets. So how that is a pleasure I am indulging in. In later on, it's going to definitely create the pain. So how I have to put in that self-control to do, you know, do the actions with of course, with the help of the God to remove that thing from me. So that is one thing. And self-inquiry, definitely, because it is you know, even the positive labels about ourselves and the negative is all kind of limiting. So that is also a main takeaway, because you know, usually we think it is negative labels, but positive labels also is limiting, and how to let go of it, that is also there. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes. Smita, you want to go next?
Sure. So, one thing that you said is dukkha bhog, right? So indulge the pain with awareness. When we indulge the pain with awareness, it will not lead to a suffering, because that's the whole difference, right? Pain is inevitable, but suffering is something that is an option. So when we become a little more aware about the pain that we are experiencing, I think we will not go to the extent of the suffering that we go. And that ties to the second point, that be your own satsang. Or, I mean, we can be our own satsang or kusang. I mean, not others can dwell so much, inflict so much on us the way we inflict on ourselves. So if we are our own satsang, we are in our own good, positive, happy thoughts, then I think it helps us with the right bhav throughout. And it's overall good for you, right? Then you are always in the right state of mind to take the right action, which always, as we discussed, it's all coming, but it will just put us in the right bhav to take that action. So it overall kind of helps being and in this journey as well as being ourselves.
Excellent takeaways. Anyone left? Sanchita?
Sanchita Kakuli.
Kaka, please turn.
Yeah, I think, what you said again about very similar to what, Smita said, that, if you understand, the suffering, I mean, if you experience, there will be pain, but, as long as, you're aware, what is leading to that, I think when you suffer, you're far more detached to that. You can just, take it in your stride. So for me, it's one is, letting go of that ego, especially at workplace. And second is, how can I start being detached from, all that happens around me, so that, that's better acceptance and I'm able to move forward and just see. I mean, so it's almost like, be self-aware of, why something is happening, and, and not react so much on it, but take it as a learning and move on.
Should I go? For me, it's about the first point that really stuck, because the pleasure and suffering, the duality, to experience each with awareness. When you're getting into the pleasure mode, also being aware, and then for me, mostly it is, and yeah, the next point about equanimity. Equanimity would be possible only with the when you I don't know. I mean, like I have to figure out why I am not able to. I mean, like Abhinav said, put in my own words about the learnings. I have to figure out if I have got the clarity, or that is the self-inquiry for me as to why I'm not able to. I'm not comfortable talking it out. I mean, whatever the learnings, so I get stuck there. So that would be my self-inquiry into it. I
Well,
try and avoid getting into it. So yeah, probably I have to write it down. Yeah, I guess that would be a takeaway from me. I try to push it back to the back burner. So that would be.
That's actually a beautiful thing. See, every situation you can use as a means of self-inquiry and as a way of connecting to God, rather than saying कि ये क्यों हो रहा है या वो क्यों हो रहा है. जो भी हो रहा है अच्छे के लिए ही हो रहा है, because if you just hold on to that one thing, it will create a moment of yoga. It is that easy to create yoga if we are aware. Very well done, Naina. Very well done. Thank you.
I think we're done.
So the few takeaways from today's shlokas is one which Kavita said. So I've understood that your choices of pleasure will also lead you to what comes after that. So pleasure and suffering are two sides of the same coin, and you can't avoid it. The second one was more, it came from today. The start of the class is actually my more is a big takeaway, because I had also been reflecting, and I feel that I've been taking away more. Like, I come for the class, but um, what we ha- what I realized, that it is my duty and responsibility to actually do more swadhyay and be completely prepared for the class, and to be aware that everyone comes and everyone takes out their time to even like Tuina, you and Abhinav, you are taking out time with a small child to come and sit with us and take us to Gita, and the least we all can do. And that is more when this came up, it was a takeaway that this week onwards, both for RCM and for Gita, I'll be a little more mindful. And I'll try to go back to what I used to do, chant the Gita, and uh, prepare myself better, or move ahead, take baby steps, but move ahead in this journey. So that has been, I think that is what more than other shlokas, because everyone has given their takeaway. And the last thing was when Tuhina said about dosh, but all the attributes of life are actually in this shloka is a dosh. Made me also link it back to RCM, where Shalini says that moksha is our final goal. So hence, I need to work on it so much, so that moksha means that these will go down. I mean, these are the things which, once I conquer this, is when I get moksha. Finally, I merge into him. And that comes with, as you said, mana, swadhyay, nidyasan, etc. And yeah, so they are interlinked, the beginning of the class and the last verse for me. That is what I.
Thank you, Kakoli. Thank you for the takeaway. One thing that I'll add here is that first is you owe nothing to me or Abhinav. Nobody here owes anything to me and him. We're not doing this class for you. Okay? We're doing this class for ourselves. So koi aaye is class mein ya nahi aaye, ultimately the greatest beneficiaries are me and him, because we are doing our own swadhyay. This is our swadhyay, right? So we are really benefiting a lot from this class. So you owe nothing to us. The only person you owe something to is yourselves. That's it. There is nobody else to really say sorry to. Yourself and God.
No, no, yourself is God, capital
Yeah,
S.
exactly. So that's it. Nothing else. है ना? So at no point of time should you feel guilty कि अरे वो लोग आते हैं उन बच्चे को वहां छोड़कर आते हैं पढ़ाई करते हैं इसलिए मुझे करना चाहिए. बिल्कुल गलत. नहीं करना है उसकी वजह से. क्योंकि हमको जो बेनिफिट मिलना है वो हमें मिल रहा है. So we are anyway benefiting out of it, irrespective. है ना? So that is not the reason to do it. The only reason to do Swadhyay is for your own uddhar. And if you're not doing it, the only person you're hurting is yourself. If you're doing your duty of doing your self uddhar, you will in the process end up spreading a lot of love in and a lot of value creation for the community that you're part of. That will happen as a side effect. But आप उस side effect के लिए काम नहीं कर रहे हो. आप किसी ना आप उसके आप किसी चीज के लिए और काम नहीं कर रहे हो सिवाय फॉर योर ओन सेल्फ उद्धार. वेरी वेरी सेल्फिश रीजंस. है ना? सो वो बहुत जरूरी है. पर्पस और वो क्या है किसके लिए हु आर यू डूइंग दिस फॉर एंड यू ओ नथिंग टू एनीबडी एल्स. ठीक है? दैट इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग आई वांटेड टू से क्योंकि वो फिर वो पर्पस लेवल हमारा फिर वो गलत हो जाता है ना? थैंक यू.
Guys, I just wanted to say, if you get a chance, then do watch this movie called 12th Fail. You will see a lot of these Gita principles being added and how, his life, how situations were and how people helped him and got him to where he is. So, it is a great movie from that perspective. It's a great movie otherwise, but it helps us in our learning also when you see the entire journey of that person. So, yeah, if you get a chance, do watch it.
कौन सी मूवी?
12th Fail.
12th?
12th
Fail.
12th Fail, it's on Hotstar.
अच्छा
It's
अच्छा.
a Vikram Messi
But-
movie.
You see, this is where your consciousness is going through a growth, Smita, where now you're seeing consciousness everywhere else. Movies is the easiest and quickest way for you to see consciousness and principles played out. Now you'll see it beyond the screen. You'll start seeing it in life. So it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's
Fantastic.
a nice movie, definitely. Yeah. From the principles, yes. Thank you.
Amazing.
Kavita, would you like to do closing shlokas, please?
ॐ सर्वेषां स्वस्तिर्भवतु सर्वेषां शान्तिर्भवतु सर्वेषां पूर्णं भवतु सर्वेषां मङ्गलं भवतु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ पूर्णमद पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ ॐ